Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Managing Stress in the Workplace. We're thrilled that you're able to join us. My name is Lisa Robinson-Scheller, Director of Sales Marketing here at Care.com, and I'll be your moderator today. I'm happy to introduce the speaker for today's webinar, Jody Gastfriend, Vice President of Senior Care at Care.com, which provides families with expert guidance, strategies, and resources to meet the individual needs of adults and seniors. As a licensed clinical social worker with more than 25 years of experience, Jody knows the challenges and struggles of family caregivers, having helped manage the care of her own father with dementia for more than a decade. Jody has held a wide range of leadership positions, including Director of Social Service at Lawrence Memorial Hospital in Medford, Chief Operating Officer of Visiting Nurse and Community Health in Arlington, and a consultant to numerous hospitals and long-term care facilities in the Boston area. Jody has lectured widely to family caregivers, human resource administrators, healthcare professionals, and policymakers on topics ranging from elder care and aging to work and family integration. A featured senior care expert for NBC, Fox News, AARP, and the Wall Street Journal, Jody is a regular contributor to the Huffington Post's HuffPost 50 section and has published numerous articles on caregiving and aging, most recently in the Harvard Business Review. Jody received her Master's of Social Work from Simmons School of Social Work and her bachelor's degree from Tufts University. Before we get started, a couple of housekeeping items. Feel free to send us any questions during today's session by typing them into the questions box in your GoToWebinar interface. We will do our best to address all questions in the Q&A portion of today's webinar. You'll also receive a copy of the deck along with the webinar recording later this week. Jody, I'll now hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and good afternoon to all the folks listening. Thanks for taking the time out to attend this webinar. So let me begin with a story. Imagine you're in your car to attend a very important business meeting. You give yourself plenty of time knowing that there could be some traffic and you want to arrive in plenty of time to be able to review your notes. You get stuck in the traffic jam, but that's okay, you've got a little cushion. And then when you arrive at your destination, it doesn't seem right, and you realize the address that you were given is incorrect. So now you're in panic mode, and you make some phone calls, you don't have the right number for the person organizing it, you don't want to make a bad impression. What happens? Well, you feel the cortisol pulsing through your veins. Your breathing gets more shallow. You start hurling expressions that I'm not going to repeat on this webinar. And you're feeling pretty upset. Your fight or flight mechanism goes into full gear. That was me about 6 months ago. I eventually found my destination with the help of a friendly police officer and arrived with only seconds to spare. This is the type of stress-inducing situation that many of us face at the workplace day in and day out. So today, we are going to talk about stress. We're going to talk about what is stress, how do you understand it, how do you pay attention to your body so that you know what's happening and you know how to calm yourself down. Because stress that goes unchecked can wreak havoc on our physical and psychological well-being. But paying attention to stress, to what triggers it, and to how our bodies react to it can really help us use stress in a constructive rather than destructive way. So the way that I describe stress is sort of based on an economic theory. We've all heard of supply and demand. Well, stress is too many demands with not enough perceived resources. In other words, the things that are coming at us on our to-do list feel to us threatening. It feels that we're not going to accomplish them, we're not going to do a good job, that there are too many obstacles in our path, and that we experience a sense of not having the internal resources to handle the demands. And it's that imbalance, that disequilibrium, that results in stress. And it's different for every person. Usually, there's a physiological response. Our bodies are trying to tell us something. And the majority of people in the workplace say work is a major source of stress. The other major source of stress that people cite is money, but work and money are often very integrated. And over 60% of people don't feel that they're doing such a good job at managing their stress. And that's pretty significant because it does have a negative impact on their ability to focus at work. And the American Psychological Association has been conducting stress interviews on segments of the population since 2007. And what they've done is they've asked people to rate their stress levels, 1 being the smallest amount of stress and 10 feeling a great deal of stress. And there is some good news here, folks. Our stress levels have actually gone down a little bit since 2007. And that's the recent 2015 study. However, about 50% of employees say that their companies are not doing enough to help them manage their own stress. So there's a lot of room for growth here. And the other good news is that people are actually talking about stress. It used to be that if you felt stress, it was your own problem, it was your own fault, you just needed to soldier on. Now there are many wellness initiatives in organizations, and there's a recognition that stress is real. It can actually be a healthy reaction to certain stimuli in the environment or of things that are happening at work. And there's stuff that we actually can do about it. So we are, as cavemen, wired for stress. And there's an evolutionary reason for that. Back in the day that we were living in caves, if we saw a saber-toothed tiger, what would we do? We would probably run. That's part of our fight or flight mechanism. But if we saw another caveman attacking us and we were cornered, what would we do? Most likely, we would try to fend that enemy off. And that's still pretty hardwired into our primitive caveman brain. And that's a good thing because it's self-protective. We need to make a choice, usually very rapidly, on which of these two mechanisms are going to be at play, fighting or fleeing. But what happens is it goes into overdrive. And many people start to perceive threats that either aren't real or at a magnitude that's far out of proportion to what is actually happening. And that's something I called horribilizing. I think this quote by Mark Twain really describes it. I have known a great many troubles, but most of them never happened. And my mom, who I love dearly, is a horribilizer. So if I'm 15 minutes late somewhere, she imagines I'm probably dead on the road somewhere. And many of us, parents and family members, we start to jump to conclusions. We also take that kind of worry to the workplace, imagining threats that are much greater than what they really are. And sometimes the horribilizing can disable us and to cause us to panic rather than to think rationally through a solution that can help us solve a problem. But let's not give stress totally a bad name, because there's some good sides to stress. Honestly, if we didn't have any stress, how many of us would really stop binge watching our favorite TV shows or stop eating that delicious Ben & Jerry's sundae, we would just do what we wanted to do because there wouldn't be any fire in our belly getting us up to tackle the challenges of the day. And those are the kinds of things that give us a sense of mastery, that give us a feeling that we're making a contribution to the world. But you really can't accomplish that without any stress. So we divide stress into two categories. Let's talk about eustress. Eustress is what's called positive stress. But guess what? It can still be pretty stressful. Anybody plan a wedding recently? There's a lot of details. There are in-laws, there are caterers, there are family members who don't necessarily make it easy on you. There's so many decisions that are to be made, but everyone thinks you should be happy. This is your wedding. And it's okay to be stressed too, because that's a normal part of that experience. Having a baby is considered one of the most stressful experiences in life, one of the most rewarding. You tell yourself, I shouldn't feel stressed, I shouldn't feel upset, I shouldn't feel depleted, then you're going to end up feeling pretty guilty when you do, and you're going to be questioning what's wrong with me that I'm not the Norman Rockwell stereotype of a parent that everybody else seems to be, and I'm fretting over every little thing with my child. And that's also true of other challenges, of getting a promotion and of honors that you might receive. Every time we raise the bar or really deviate from what our normal expectations are, however exciting and positive they are, that comes with a certain amount of stress. And the problem isn't that the stress is there. The problem is when we think we shouldn't be feeling it, or that it somehow reflects badly on us, that we're experiencing anything other than great joy. I don't know if any of you saw the recent Pixar film, Inside Out. But that film very aptly conveys the different emotions that swirl around in our head. And in the end, and hopefully this is not a spoiler alert, but it is sadness that wins the day, because you can't have constant joy, and you are also plagued with disgust and fear, which are normal emotions. But until you allow some of the authentic feelings like sadness and disappointment to come through, only then can we have the full spectrum and the full color of feelings that are really part of a normal human experience. So let's take a look at what causes what we would say distress. And as I mentioned previously, money is a big one. Couples fight about money, people worry they don't have enough money, and even people who have money, they worry, what are they doing with their money? Is it growing enough? Money is one of the major sources of stress, and so is health. None of us goes through life unscathed. And some people lose loved ones early in life, but as you grow older, inevitably you are going to lose a parent, lose a grandparent, or perhaps lose your life partner. And health-related issues are also a form of loss. We may just have a really bad flu and not be able to function for a week or two, or we may be in an accident or have a chronic illness that can lead to stress and in some cases depression. Other life changes that cause a great deal of distress and are top on the list are divorce and unemployment. Certainly during the economic downturn, many people were walking around pretty stressed. And in fact, some of those people who were stressed became depressed because they also felt that they did not have control over their own situation. Another major cause for stress are caregiving employees. So having been one myself, caring for my father who had dementia and my 3 kids and working full-time, it was during an era where people weren't talking about this. So I felt to even bring it up at work would somehow diminish me in the eyes of my colleagues and my boss. So I took the attitude of shut up and soldier on. And guess what? That wasn't so effective. I started to have headaches. I started to have stomach aches. I started to have problems falling asleep. And now I know that those were all normal experiences. And many companies like Care.com offer benefits to employers to address the very stressors that caregiving employees feel, whether they're caring for young children, whether they're caring for parents or grandparents or other family members. Because the notion that our work life and our personal life are completely siloed is no longer the case. There's a lot of overlap. And if we're feeling really bad in one sector of our life, it's inevitably going to impact the other. So how do we provide the right kind of support so we don't have to leave the workplace altogether? Because it's really tough to get back in, and that can be another major source of stress. Many, many years ago, when I was in a job interview, I was asked a question, and this was for a management position that I very much wanted. And they said to me, how do you handle stress? I had not been asked that in an interview before, and I thought it was a great question. And I said, well, I'm actually pretty good at it. I think through challenges, I'm very aware that how I behave and respond is a model for other people in an organization. So I try to not be reactive. I try to talk things through. I try to have honest, authentic communication. I try to come up with action plans. And I try to really deal with my stress in a way that doesn't negatively impact others. And they smiled. And then I paused. And I added, and then I go home and I snap at my husband and kids. And they laughed, and I got the job. But there was truth to what I said. I was able to hold it together pretty well. And then I went home and yelled at everybody. So that's really not a great way to handle stress, to hold it all inside until you get home to someone that knows and loves you enough that they're going to put up with that. What you want to be able to do is handle your stress during the day so that you're not a powder keg when you come home at the end of the day. So what are the things that cause people to feel an exorbitant amount of stress in the workplace? Well, some of it just has to do with workload, and this is also a perception. One person given a project may think, well, this is totally manageable. I'm going to get this done on Friday, the deadline. And then another person might be given the same project and think that there's absolutely no way I can get this done. This is going to take me a month. So some of it is the way we approach projects, and we may need some help from some expert project management professionals. But a really major source of stress is really feeling disempowered. And I think this is really key. I don't think it's the work itself that stresses people out that much. I think it's the sense that they don't have control and that they can be whipsawed and that they are not appreciated. And the more disempowered and voiceless people feel, the more likely they are going to feel stressed. And guess what? They're probably going to talk with their feet, meaning they're either going to miss work or leave the job altogether. So what we want to do as good employers and as professional employees is find a way to have a dialogue and an understanding of what these stressors are and what we can do about it in real time so they don't become the kindling for a big fire down the road. And many of you deal directly with customers. And of course, we love our customers. They're the reason we're in business to begin with. And we get great feedback from our customers, and they help us improve. But there can be some pretty tough customers out there. And there's a real skill in handling those tough customers when people are angry at your company and taking it out on you. And I know that people on the front lines of customer service are often the ones to internalize this frustration. And they especially need to have a healthy outlet and need to be able to speak with their supervisor and each other so they are not feeling that somehow they are the cause of the customer's frustration. And they also need to be empowered to resolve the problem, because most of the time when a customer is angry, if their problem is resolved to their satisfaction, they can feel pretty good about that company, and they might be a strong promoter. And that's an empowering experience for someone on the front lines to have. So you've heard the expression, listen to your body. Sometimes easier said than done. How many of us, when we're sitting in a meeting and it's getting tense and we're thinking about all the things that we need to be doing but are not doing in that moment, start to feel like, oh, my neck is killing me, my back hurts, and I've got a headache and my stomach's growling? Our bodies are telling us something. Pay attention. And this is a list of some of the negative side effects from stress that have been studied in a number of research initiatives that we know. For me, I get headaches and I get stomach aches, and I also wake up in the middle of the night with my to-do list, which is really annoying because there's nothing really I could do at 2 in the morning about my to-do list, and I can't get it out of my head. Or we become short-tempered, or we kind of feel like we can't pay attention to something. We flit from one task to another without any real sense of satisfaction for any of them. Some of us go to that delicious Ben & Jerry's ice cream in the freezer or comfort food to at least temporarily ease our sense of anxiety. And these are all both symptoms and actions that people take as a result of feeling overwhelming stress. And it shouldn't be ignored. While most day-to-day stress is manageable with certain techniques, chronic unresolved stress can lead to serious major mental illness or can exacerbate it. So for example, if someone has suicidal thoughts, that's something that you have to take seriously. Most people who talk about suicide potentially have a plan in mind or may act on it at some point in time, and we don't know whether they will or they won't. So we want to make sure that that person has some help. And if they feel hopeless, that nothing's ever going to change, they're feeling depressed, if they have difficulty concentrating, lack of enthusiasm, low energy, disinterest, those are all more serious warning signs of a situation that's gone beyond normal day-to-day stress. And addictions can be exacerbated by stress or can be initially triggered by a stressful situation. We have an enormous opioid problem in this country. I was recently in New Hampshire at an event called the Addiction Policy Forum, and opioid addiction is now the leading cause of death among young men, trumping car accidents. So what's going on? What's going on with people that they are needing to dull their pain from the real world and turning to drugs and alcohol? We need to pay attention both as an employer, but as a community and as a good citizen, and not let people who are in trouble struggle on their own in isolation. So now let's talk about what do you actually do to manage your own stress. And there actually are a number of studies that are proven to help people both manage and alleviate their stress. Well, the first thing is to pay attention. What are the things that are triggers for us? And it's different for everyone. Is it your commute every day into work? Is it your boss that's micromanaging you? Is it a colleague that is constantly chattering and crunching on food so loud that you can't pay attention to what you're doing. It's very easy for us to dismiss these things and say, oh, well, you know, that's just part of life and I can deal with it. And maybe that's true. But as these things pile up over and over and they start to erode our sense of well-being, then it's time to really take note of them and to do something about it. So what happens when you're feeling that way, when you feel very tense, very anxious that you might snap? What do you tend to do? Pay attention to that. Well, in the old days, I'll tell you what I did. I pushed myself harder because my reasoning was, well, if I get more stuff done today, that's less stuff that I'm going to worry about tomorrow. And that was true, and that still is true. But there's a flaw in that soldiering on philosophy. I wasn't building in any breaks for myself. I went from my 8 or 9 hour a day work immediately to taking care of kids, to paying bills and going back to work at night, repeat. And I hadn't really thought through or given myself permission to build in time for myself and breaks from that pattern. Establishing boundaries is increasingly more difficult than it ever was. Now that we have technology that enables us to work pretty much anywhere, anytime, it has given us much more freedom than back in the day when we didn't have email. But the downside is we're always on, or we feel that we should always be on. Arianna Huffington, in her book Thrive, talks a lot about how we need to make some important choices around our work life. She talks about not sleeping with your cell phone and about really giving yourself space in your day away from emails and away from your computer and away from your phone screen. But it's hard to do that, especially if we work in cultures where we think we have to respond instantly. Part of having some boundaries is to give yourself permission to really take a vacation, to go to that soccer game with your kids without your cell phone, to go out to dinner with your partner or spouse and not check your email every time they look away or go to the restroom. It's a matter of taking charge of your life and your well-being. But it's not easy because the temptations are everywhere. And we got to take time to recharge. And I am not always so good at this, but I'm working on it. And what does that mean? Well, it could be something like really taking a vacation. But on a day-to-day basis, it really means getting off your butt and stretching, or maybe going outside and taking a walk. Or maybe if you have a gym, going down and doing a 7-minute workout. I have that app on my phone, and it's been great. 7 minutes, I've done a little bit of a workout. I can go back to my desk, and maybe if I get 7 more minutes at the end of the day, I do it again. And I'll tell you, I feel a lot better on those days when I've sat for 8 or 9 hours. But it's hard to schedule those because there's always one more email. There's always one more conversation or task that we can complete. Here's what I suggest. Put it on your calendar as a busy meeting. That's your meeting for yourself. And hold that as sacred as you would a meeting with your boss. And tell them I said so. Learn how to relax. Well, that's easier said than done. It's actually a practice. There's a reason that people meditate. There's a reason that people in yoga practice deep breathing. It is something that people try to achieve Zen and spend years and years and years doing. There are many apps now to help people with breathing exercises, with meditation. I've tried them, and they're actually really helpful. Or you can just do it on your own. But there's a lot of data now that shows that if we learn to slow down our breathing, to pay attention to our breathing, that we can actually slow down a physiological fight or flight response. We can retrain our brains. And going back to the story I told you before about potentially being late to a meeting, getting stuck in traffic and lost, I don't remember breathing. I must have, because I'm still around to talk to you today. But we often hold our breath in moments of great stress and have very shallowed, erratic breathing. So that's one of the first things that you can pay attention to, no matter how stressed you are, and get some control over. And as much as we'd like to appear that we are happy and always engaged and always ready to take on a new task and nothing phases us, none of us are really like that. And there's only so long we can pretend to be. So I recommend that people have a chat with their supervisor if there are things in their work experience that aren't working for them. It doesn't mean the supervisor can fix it all with a magic wand, but it's a matter of awareness. And there may be other people feeling the same way. If you have an unsympathetic supervisor, that creates more challenge. And you may, in those cases, might want to find out from your human resource department what types of supports and work-life benefits are being offered by your organization. And then there are action-oriented approaches to stress reduction. Years ago, I implemented for myself something called the 24-hour rule. And it was after I did something that I wasn't very proud of. I worked in the hospital and had a very good relationship with one of the physicians who was one of the biggest admitters in the hospital. And we had worked very closely together for well over a year. And one day I walk into my office and my team was very upset with him. He had lodged a formal complaint about them to senior management without discussing it with me. You know, I had been on vacation for a few days, but it really surprised and disappointed me. And I immediately, on the heels of this discussion with my staff, who were quite upset, called him, and I got him. And I kind of reamed him out. Didn't really give him a chance to explain his position. I just let him have it. I regretted that move. It did not do anything to improve my relationship with him. It actually harmed it, and it took many months to repair the damage. Now, was I wrong to be upset? No. But was that the right way to express it? No. So after that, I implemented the 24-hour rule, which is if I'm really pissed off about something, in most cases, unless I absolutely have to address it in that moment, I give myself 24 hours. And actually, sometimes this can help in family matters as well. And that allows time to cool down, to think things through from a different angle, to maybe look at it from the other person's perspective, and to feel less stressed. Many of us really struggle because how many times have you heard there are just not enough hours in the day? Well, guess what? The universe isn't giving us any more than 24. So it's up to us to figure out how we're going to fit everything into our days and still find time for hopefully 8 hours of sleep. Ha ha. And one of the things that gets in our way is email. And I'm an offender of this too. But email can feel to us like an urgent request for action, when in fact most emails can wait. They don't demand an immediate response. We just feel they do, or else we don't want to have to be bothered with them later. But then we get very clogged up on being reactive in the moment, and we give ourselves less time to think about problems that are more long-term and ultimately more gratifying for us. So how do we set limits with our time and prioritize what we need to do with our work? Part of it is a conscious decision to not say yes to everything. And you will need to have a partner in this, and it's probably going to have to be your manager. If you're constantly saying, yes, I'll take this on, and feeling overwhelmed, you are also the architect of that problem. So you need to figure out, what do I want to focus on? How are my priorities aligned with the company's priorities? And what am I doing that I probably shouldn't be doing or don't have to focus on to the degree that I am? And for some people, it's just that they're not as organized with their time as they could be. And small adjustments in their day, in terms of scheduling maybe 45-minute meetings instead of hour meetings, having somebody create action items and follow-ups so that you're not rehashing things over and over again with teams. Sometimes it has to do with how your workspace is organized, how your inbox is organized. How do you create a work environment that invites you to be productive rather than fights against your productivity? And that's different for everyone. But coming into work, you should feel comfortable. You should be physically comfortable. Ergonomically, your desk and keyboard should feel like a good fit. You shouldn't be having back and neck pains just because you're sitting at a laptop. And you should feel that you have set it up to reflect yourself. Even if it's a small work area, there should be something that's personal and comforting for you. There's a school of thought in cognitive behavioral therapy that focuses on negative self-narratives. And I think all of us at some point have had a negative self-narrative. Let's take a little incident. You're rushing around, and all of a sudden you realize you locked the keys in the car. And you're going to be late to a meeting, and now you're going to have to wait for AAA, and it's going to be a whole thing on your day. What do you say to yourself? You say, you moron, I can't believe you bleepity bleep did this. And you just chastise yourself, which makes you feel worse. Or do you say, okay, I just locked my keys in the car. That's not good, but I can solve this problem. It's not the end of the world. I have AAA. I guess I can budge the next meeting. And maybe, just maybe, the universe is trying to tell me something. Maybe I'm rushing around like a chicken with my head cut off. And this is a safe warning sign. I didn't have a car accident, that maybe I need to slow down. So paying attention to what we're telling ourselves is really foundational to our sense of well-being. There's now a school called self-compassion. And it's a whole body of thought which is very relevant to caregivers and, in fact, to everyone, which is if you cannot be compassionate to yourself, then how the heck are you going to be compassionate to anybody else? But in order to achieve that, you have to do it very thoughtfully. You have to stop criticizing yourself, judging yourself, kicking yourself every time you make a mistake, and instead see it as a learning opportunity. Also using our thinking brains rather than our emotional brains. We all know someone who every time something goes wrong, they're kicking up a lot of dust, they're running around getting everybody worked up, and they're very emotion driven. And then people react to that by thinking that the sky is falling. It's important that when the sky is falling, people actually believe us, and we're not the boy who cried wolf. Most of the time, it isn't. And what we need to do is to employ our rational brain to help calm down the feelings that may get stirred up when things go wrong and come up with a problem-solving strategy. And this may involve collaborating with other people. Often some of the best ideas come when you're in a discussion with other people and they can help you think it through. Many people, especially when they're given a promotion or a new challenge, have what we call imposter syndrome. And I certainly have had this in the past with new jobs and new challenges, thinking, who the heck did I think I was that I could run this program, or I could speak in front of 200 people on this topic, or whatever it is. And guess what? That's kind of normal. And some people think you should fake it till you make it. because acting confident without being arrogant sometimes helps us, our confidence level, catch up. But if we allow our insecurity to predominate and take over, then most likely we are not going to have a chance to build the sense of mastery that we need. And some people are perfectionists. And there's a saying that perfect should not be the enemy of the good. And we often see this in the workplace, that there's that one person who has to have everything so perfect that the project is probably never going to get over the finish line. So sometimes you have to sacrifice utter perfection so that you can have a goal completed and you can move things forward. And also thinking, what is the upside to the stress? Stress tells us a lot. It's a means of our bodies communicating to us. Maybe it's the gas I need in my tank to actually really focus on this problem when I've really been brushing it under the rug. So what are the benefits of stress reduction? And by the way, I say reduction, not elimination, because we need to live at peace with our stress. It should be our partner. But we don't want it to take over in such a way that it impairs us. Well, studies show that we're probably going to get sick less. Our immune systems are going to be healthier. And we all know times that we were run down when we just were more vulnerable to getting sick. We're going to have more energy. And we are going to, in general, bring a more positive sense of self to our workplace, to our relationships, and to our world. And that often creates a more positive environment with other people. When they feel you're at peace, you're calm, you're sending out positive energy, that impacts others around you. And the opposite is also true. But in terms of employers, you will be able to focus better. We've all heard of that state of flow, which is not so easy to achieve, but I often achieve it personally when I'm writing, and I'm very engrossed in what I'm writing. And flow is a state where you're so engaged that you almost forget about what's going on around you. You may not even feel hungry. You may sit there for long periods of time engaged in your work and not feel aches and pains. You may not feel a need to check Facebook because you are in an engaged, focused place. But in order to do that, you have to be able to compartmentalize your stress in ways of enhancing your well-being. People should be encouraged to check out resources through their workplace. First place to go is to talk with your manager if you're feeling stressed. Talk about what is feeling stressful and what can you do about it. HR departments are great at communicating all sorts of resources. They will be the most knowledgeable about what are the range of benefits that your company offers. And many HR departments are very focused on wellness initiatives. Companies are doing all sorts of things, from offering yoga classes to flexibility initiatives to seminars on wellness, and also supporting caregiving employees. There may be some peer-to-peer initiatives so that you can connect with peers formally or informally around a topic that you are experiencing. So at care.com, we have a group of young parents who have decided to get together and have lunch every once in a while and talk about some of the joys, trials, and tribulations of being a parent. And there are other ways to find people who are experiencing something similar so that you build community, which decreases isolation, decreases stress, and gives you more perspective. And then, of course, technology can play a role. And there's some great apps out there. I've tried Headspace, And I've also used some of the methodology from John Kabat-Zinn on guided meditation practices. And these are worth trying. It doesn't take a lot of time. The time when it's hardest to force ourselves to do this is when we're most stressed. And that's usually the time when it's most needed. So there are steps that we can take. And remember that stress is there to tell you something. It's not a bad thing, but it can take over in unhealthy ways. And it's up to us to figure out how to work with stress in a healthy, constructive manner. So I'm going to stop there and open it up to questions anyone might have.
Thank you, Jody. Well, we've received a few questions from the audience members today, and so let's start addressing them. The first question is, I see that this session is being recorded. Could I have a copy of this session to send to a friend who would benefit from this? Absolutely, we are recording it, and we will make the slides available as well as send a link to anybody who's attending today or who registered so that you can watch it again if you wish or share with others. The next question, and for those who might have missed the instructions in the beginning, in the box on your right, there's a question box, and in there you can submit your questions. The next question is, I work full-time and have 2 school-age children. Recently, my mother got sick, and I'm helping to take care of her as well. I have very little flexibility at work and have been feeling stressed about managing it all. My boss does not seem all that understanding. Should I keep my mouth shut and hope for the best?
Great question, and no. You can only keep your mouth shut and hope for the best for just so long. There's going to be something that will happen, some minor crisis, some event, and you're going to get outed. So what I suggest is that you try to have a conversation with your manager. And I would start saying, I really love my job, or I'm really happy doing what I'm doing, and I wanted to share with you some challenges that I'm facing personally and talk with you about ways that I can stay engaged at my job and hopefully not be overstressed in my personal life. And I think if you start from a place of, I really want to make this work and I really want to hear your perspective, that might elicit a problem-solving, helpful approach from your boss. And it may not. I don't know your boss. I would also suggest you speak to human resources, because human resources really has heard these stories many times before. This is not an isolated situation. You are probably in the majority of people who are dealing with some kind of caregiving challenge, whether it's child or elder care, and you've got both. And if they haven't put in place benefits to support caregiving employees, they may be thinking about it, and it's voices like yours that are really important to inform human resources and management that this is what their employees are going through, and that you could really take advantage of benefits that are being offered and be a more engaged employee.
Okay, the next question is, I recently started a meditation practice and found that it's a good way of not letting my worrying mind get the better of me. I often meditate in the middle of the day, and it seems to help me focus at work. The problem is that I work in a wide open space and don't feel comfortable meditating in front of my colleagues. I went outside in the nice weather, but that's not practical in the winter. Any suggestions?
Well, first off, good for you. Good for you for having a meditation practice, because I know from personal experience that takes a certain amount of forethought and discipline. And wow, meditating in front of a group of people, that takes courage. But I don't think it's probably an ideal situation. You're going to feel uncomfortable, and people are going to be wondering, what the heck are you doing? So some companies like Care.com, we actually offer meditation rooms. I know not all companies do, but that's really in recognition of the importance of having some breaks, whether you need a little nap or you need to meditate. I would speak with your manager and HR about this, because even if they don't have formal meditation rooms, there may be some office space that you can use, and you may surprise yourself. You may start a trend, and other people may follow suit. So this could be the beginning of a very good thing for your organization.
I recently got a job promotion and have had a surprising reaction. I'm losing sleep and getting stomach aches thinking about all that I have to do and learn. While I was initially confident about the role, I now feel insecure. I haven't told anyone about it because I don't want them to think I can handle the job, but can I?
So join the club. You have imposter syndrome. And this is a very common phenomenon that I myself have had numerous times throughout my career, and it's normal and to be expected. So don't suffer in silence and think that this is some indication that you're really a failure, because acknowledging it is really the first step. You don't have to go around and tell people, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this job, because that won't instill confidence. But you could share with your manager that you're really excited, you're really thrilled, but you also have some anxiety. Break it down. Are there components to this job that make you anxious because you don't have the skill set or there's a lot to learn? Once you start breaking down the very things that make you anxious and come up with a plan to tackle them, you'll be surprised. Your anxiety will start to dissipate over time as you achieve more mastery, and you will also gain more confidence. And it's a process.
Well, that's about all we have time for today. From all of us at care.com, thanks for joining us, and have a wonderful day.